Frog in my throat. I always have a frog in my throat. The second I start recording, I sit down to record and I get a frog right in my throat. What's that about? Hi everybody and welcome to Inside number 23, my podcast about knitting and sewing and my crafty life in general. In case you don't know, my name is Katie and I am currently recording from Hertfordshire, which is just north of London in the UK, where I live with my gorgeous husband Emrys and our equally gorgeous little pug puppy Rolly. If you want to find me on all of the social medias and such, you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Periscope as Miss Lavelli, and we also have a Ravelry group for this podcast. Just search Inside number 23 podcast in the groups tab on Ravelry and you will find us. Come along and join the conversation. It's a lovely group filled with lovely people. That's also where I post my show notes. I do pop them in the down bar below, but they tend to be a little more interactive on Ravelry as I can link up things like patterns and that type of thing that I mention in the podcast. So like I said, welcome back to any long-time viewers. It's so lovely to have you back again. And hello, if it's your first time with us this week, thank you for coming and spending a little bit of time with me. I know that there are a lot of other podcasts out there in the world, so it means a lot that you're giving me a chance. So hi, and I hope you enjoy what you're gonna find in Inside number 23 today. I'm coming to you actually a day later than usual. It's Monday the 27th of June. For one thing, can we believe that June is nearly over? I can't. I mean, it's only just started getting sunny in the UK, but we have had a lot of rain recently, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And yeah, it's been an interesting week here in the UK this week. I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room right away. In case you've been following the news in the UK, we had a referendum this week. We were voting as to whether or not to remain in or leave the EU, and we voted to leave the EU. I wanted to address this really quickly up front. As I've said before, I don't like kind of avoiding to talk about things even though they may not necessarily be 100% appropriate for a crafty, happy place podcast. But I did vote to remain in the EU. That was my own opinion, my own standpoint on that. And obviously we have voted to leave. So naturally I am a little disappointed, as you may have seen from Instagram posts. The only thing I would like to say is that since the result, the UK has been incredibly divided, and it was almost smack bang down the middle, the divide between those who wanted to leave and those who wanted to stay, and there has been a lot of ugliness from both sides since the result came out. I'm not going to go into the details because, like I said, this is a happy place and I want it to remain that way, but I just wanted to reiterate what I was talking about at the end of my podcast last week about finding love in difficult situations. That's how I'm going to be living my life. It's how I live my life permanently, but it feels particularly appropriate for the upcoming weeks and months as we go into the unknown. Yeah, I just think let's show a little bit of unity and support for each other. If you're watching this and you voted differently, I completely respect your opinions and the fact that you may have voted differently, so I hope that you choose to respect mine. I know that the community that I am a part of, that we're all a part of, is one of love and support, and those people who have got in touch with me who have had a difference of opinion have been incredibly articulate and open about their thoughts. They haven't been confrontational, and again, I feel like if more people communicated with each other in the way that we communicate with each other within this community, the world would be so much a better and nicer place, don't you think? In terms of other stuff that's been going on this week, like I said, we've been having some real kind of freakish weather going on, particularly where I am in the south of England. We had excessive rainfall that actually caused the street outside my house to flood, which isn't something that we've experienced kind of before. So that was pretty intense. I have never seen anything like it, to be honest, and it happened very, very quickly. And I want to say thank you to everyone who expressed concern when I posted a couple of videos of what was going on Instagram. It really means a lot that you were kind of there and feeling for me and offering advice. But it literally lasted less than about an hour before they managed to get some manhole covers open and then the street clear of water. interesting week. Like I said, we've been a bit all over the place, to be honest. But on top of that, I have managed to get a lot of nice crafty stuff done. Emrys and I have spent a lot of time together, which has been lovely. Just this morning, we got up early to watch the final of Game of Thrones. No spoilers here, but gotta love Game of Thrones, absolutely love it. Before I get on with all of the crafty, sewingy, knittingy goodness, I did just want to say an apology, to be honest. I want to apologise to a lot of people who have been messaging me recently. I have been horrendously lax in getting in touch with people. I'm not necessarily all that great at answering messages at the best of times, but when things start getting a little bit hectic and my life starts getting a bit hectic, the first thing that tends to go out the window is me responding to messages. So I have been receiving messages if you have been sending them to me. Thank you for getting in touch, and I will be doing my best within the next week or so to completely get up to date in terms of messages and get back to everybody. So I'm so sorry if you feel that I'm ignoring you. I'm not. It's literally just something that I need to get better at doing. So I thank you so much for your patience in that. And like I said, I'll be doing my best to get in touch as soon as possible. The other thing is prizes for recent giveaways and knit-alongs. I'm having a couple of issues with getting in touch with some prize providers. So I am chasing that up currently. But I've also not had much time to get down to the post office to post some of the prizes that I actually have. Again, I really appreciate your patience. Thank you for bearing with me, and I will keep you up to date. I do know that these prizes are coming to you. They will be coming to you. It's just obviously I'm a one-man band running this. I can't delegate these kind of things to other people. So when commitments come up in my real life, my everyday life, as opposed to the wonderful world of podcasting, they often do have to take preference. So thank you for understanding, and like I said, I will be in touch and I'll keep you up to date, and you will get your prizes soon, I promise, because I want you to have them because they're brilliant and you all deserve to have prizes, every single one of you. But let's get started, shall we? Because you guys have come for a podcast, not just me rabbiting on about pretty much nothing. Let's get started right away with, what am I wearing? So today I am actually wearing, if you can't tell, my Carol dress. So this is the dress that I made for my Netflix and Knit and Sew kind of series, and it's based on a pinafore style dress from the movie Carol, and this is actually the first time I have worn this dress out and about since I completed it, and I absolutely love it. So as you can see, nice V-neck fitted on the waist, and I have this pleated skirt which is most probably not going to be showing up. Oh, there we go, my pleats in the front. It's about knee length. I won't bother showing you the skirt, it's a skirt. But I really, really enjoy it. I'm loving the fit of it. It's genuinely one of the most comfortable garments that I own at the moment, because it's made 100% to fit me, not to fit a size that I might have been previously or anything like that, and I really, really love it. I'm also wearing it with, it's a silk blouse that I've got on. This is actually original vintage 1940s blouse that I bought at a vintage fair in London several years ago, but it's a lovely staple piece. I love it. It's covered in these hand embroidered details which are just exquisite. It's one of my favourite pieces. So yeah, that's what I'm wearing today. So let's move on straight away to what's on my needles, my knitting segment of the podcast. And this week I have been being fairly monogamous with my knitting. I learned last week I was showing you lots of different projects that I've been starting, that I've been picking up. In particular, I had 2 pairs of socks on the go. I had my Boy Who Lives, my zigzagular socks. I also had a pair of blueberry waffle socks for Emrys. And I had started a pair of mittens with this gorgeous pug colourwork on them. I have been working on those projects this week, but literally it's just a couple of extra rows on each one. It's not a huge amount of progress, so I decided that I'm not actually going to be showing you them this week, because it's not very interesting if they've literally grown that much over the space of a week. The other projects that I have been spending a lot more of my time on have progressed quite considerably from last week. So I'm going to start off with what I really feel is my favourite project of the week by far. I'm enjoying working on it so much, and it makes me happy with every single stitch that I work, and that is my Featherweight cardigan. And here she is. Oh my goodness, guys, how incredible is this yarn? This is my Featherweight cardigan. It's a pattern by Hannah Fettig, and the yarn is Voolevine Yarn in the Gashley Crumb colourway, and I cannot tell you how happy I am with how this is knitting up. It is everything I could have wanted it to be. I'm just going to pop it up the other way so you can get an idea of the shape of the cardigan. So there we go. You start at the neckline and you work your way down till you get to below the sleeves, and then you pop the sleeves onto stitch holders, which I have done, and you then continue knitting the body in one piece. So it's very simple. It's a really nice construction. To be honest, I don't do a lot of top-down cardigans because it's a relatively modern way of knitting them, I think, because all of the work that I've done from vintage patterns and kind of vintage knitting books, in general, all of the knitwear is pieced, so you knit your sleeves separately and your front and your back separately, and you sew them all together afterwards, and in general they start from the bottom and go up. I do think that's a more traditional way of construction, but I'm really enjoying this kind of starting from the top, because you actually get to see what the garment is going to look like, and you get a really good idea of how the fit's going to be. So I know straight away that this is going to be a really lovely fit. I talked last week about making sure that I got gauge, and my gauge is still spot on with this. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. The yarn I'm using, like I said, is Voolevine Yarns. It is in her Volca base, which is an MCN base, merino cashmere nylon, and I love it. I only have this much left of my original skein, little small kind of palm-sized little cake left, but I've managed to do a really big chunk of the cardigan on just the one skein. As you can see, the fronts are kind of folding in on themselves. They are a little bit bigger than they look there. But the idea is to knit for 8 inches, I believe is specified in the pattern, or as long as you want below the armholes, and then do the ribbing and then start with the sleeves. So I've done this much under the armholes at the moment, which I'd say is around about maybe 5 inches. So what I'm going to do is continue till I get to 8 inches and try this on and see whether I like the length. If I like the length, I'll leave it. If not, I'll add a little bit more on. I'm a huge fan of Kristen, who is the dyer behind Voolevine Yarns, as you'll know if you watch this podcast. I think she's incredible. But this yarn and this base is genuinely probably the most gorgeous yarn that I've ever worked with. I've worked with it previously for my Outlander shawl that I worked on, which was this exact same base, but in her Outlander colourway, which is incredible. And if you haven't got some in your stash, you really need some. But yeah, it's just so beautiful to work with, and the feel of it under your fingers when you're knitting with it is gorgeous. I'm also using a little progress keeper. It's a unicorn, and this was actually given to me by Kristen as well, so it seemed appropriate to use it with this project. And the needles that I'm using are my old favourites, my interchangeable higher sharps, and these I believe are, yes, 3.5mm, which is the size 4 US. And yeah, I've been knitting on this every single second that I can get, which is why it has grown so much from last week. I literally had only just cast this on this time last week, so I'm thinking that this is going to be off the needles a lot sooner than I'd anticipated, because I'm actually knitting this for Sue of Knit24 on Periscope and the Legacy Knits podcast on YouTube. She's doing a knit along for her Periscope channel, which is a fingering weight sweater or cardigan knit along, and you're supposed to have it finished by September. So I feel that I'm doing pretty well. I definitely will have this ready by September. And yeah, it's bringing me a lot of happiness right now. I just love it. I love it. And I could see myself very easily making a couple more featherweight cardigans, because I just know this is going to be a really nice throw on, easy to wear garment when it's done. The other project that I'm going to share with you this week in terms of progress is my Artichoke bag, which is a pattern by Pam Allen, and I'm knitting this as a mini knit along with my dear friend Eric of the Sticks Twine podcast. I was saying last week how I've been a little bit annoyed with the linen yarn, because the yarn that I'm using is Quince & Co Sparrow. So I've only got a little bit of the first skein left. It's kind of like a little donut. It's 100% linen, which I've never worked with before, and I was getting a little bit frustrated. But thank you for everyone who got in touch basically saying, stick it out with the linen, it's really great, it's really resilient, you know, you can stick it in the washer and the dryer and it's amazing. And I was like, okay guys, okay, I'm going to stick it out with the linen. And I am really enjoying working on this now. It's still definitely not my favourite medium to work with. I much prefer working with, say for example, my Voolevine yarns with that beautiful soft texture with the cashmere. That's my real love. But this has been fun, and I must admit it's been great TV knitting because it's completely mindless now. So last week I had what was basically a little hairnet. Now I have a bigger hairnet. This is my bag so far. So you start from the bottom and work your way out, and then when you get the total amount of stitches that you need, you start working up. So I'm at the point where I'm now just working on the body of the bag as it's going up. So if I can show you my stitch marker here. This stitch marker was a gift from Eric when he went to Disney, so again, felt very appropriate. I have to put it on here, but this marks where the base of the bag finishes and where the body of the bag starts. So I literally have just done a couple of rounds since then, but the idea is to work and work and work until you get to the right height, and then you start to switch to the contrast colour, and I have this beautiful natural colour as my contrast. So I do think it's going to be a lot prettier when I block it, because as you can see it's all kind of ripply. I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that the cable that I've got them on is smaller than the bag circumference as well. But yeah, it's very addictive, and to be honest, working with a linen yarn, I actually find that I'm knitting a lot quicker than I usually do, because it doesn't tend to fray or split at all, which is really interesting, this yarn. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to having this bag to kind of take with me shopping, and particularly with everyone telling me how durable that this will be when it's finished. That is really, really appealing to me. So my slightly larger hairnet, it really looks like a hairnet now. Let's be honest, that completely looks like a hairnet. This project really is affirming to me my love of Quince & Co yarn. I know that I was talking about one of my previous projects, the Void Shawl that I finished using Quince & Co, how much I enjoyed it, but I am really, really enjoying Quince & Co as a company. I think they're great, and I'll definitely be buying more from them in the future. Talking about my Void Shawl that I finished and I showed to you last week, the Voidalong is still going on, which is a knit along for myself and again Eric of the Sticks Twine. We're hosting the Voidalong, in which all you need to do to enter is knit the Void Shawl, which is an incredible pattern which I absolutely love, by Melanie Berg, and enter either on Eric's Ravelry group or my Ravelry group. So Eric's is Sticks Twine, mine is inside number 23, or you can enter in both, which I know that a lot of people are doing. And we will be drawing prizes in July, so it's coming up, you guys. But there is still time, because it is a really, really easy project to get off the needles nice and quick. So those are the projects that I'm going to be sharing with you this week in terms of what I've been working on. However, I do want to talk about what will very soon be a new cast on in terms of what's on my needles. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Katie, you've got so many projects on the needles. What about all of those socks that you said that you were going to finish? And this is true. I love knit-alongs and I love getting involved with other people's podcasts, but I did say I'm not going to be doing any knit-alongs because I need to get all of the projects that I have on the needles off the needles before I start anything new. And then throwing a bit of a spanner in the works, cheeky so-and-so, Nessa, I'm joking Nessa, you're absolutely amazing, Nessa of the Kiltercraft podcast, which if you haven't watched, go and watch it right this second, because Nessa is genuinely one of my favourite podcasters and she is a wonderful person, and everybody should be going and watching her because she's fabulous. She has just re-released a knitting pattern called the I Heart Bee socks, and if you know anything about me, you'll know that I have a little bit of an obsession with bees, and therefore it was just a complete no-brainer that I had to knit this pattern as soon as it came out. So it was released, I believe, yesterday, and Nessa is now going to be having a knit along for the I Heart Bees socks, and I'm gonna be getting involved because I couldn't say no to this beautiful pattern, to beautiful Nessa, and it just has to happen. From the second that I saw that Nessa was redoing her pattern, because she's been working on it for a while, sharing it on her podcast, and also quite a lot of other people have been test knitting it for her. So I've been seeing it float around on Instagram and that type of thing. I knew that I would have to make it as soon as it came out, and therefore I had to have some yarn in mind for it when it was eventually released. I know exactly what yarn I'm going to use. It's very special yarn for the very special project. And that is this yarn. Ah, look at it, it's so beautiful. Okay, I have showed this on the podcast previously. This is some of my Homespun House Harry Potter Yarn Club yarn. The colourway is called Leaning Forward on His Trolley He Broke Into a Heavy Run. It's on her soft sock base, so it's a merino nylon base, and just look at it. It's blues and greens and purples and speckles and all beautiful things. And it is variegated. There are kind of different colours going on here, but it's very subtle and very soft. So I know that if I use this for Nessa's pattern, the little geometric little honeycomb shapes are still going to show up really, really nicely. So this has been earmarked for your socks, Nessa, and I will be kind of caking this up as soon as I get a spare second and casting on your socks once I find some spare needles. Can't wait, can't wait. So yes, Nessa, this will be your socks. So that's everything for what's on my needles this week, but I feel that it kind of moves really nicely into our next segment, which is For the Love of Pod. And this is where I talk about a couple of podcasts that have been giving me a special amounts of joy over the past couple of weeks or so. And I have just a few to mention this week. First up, I wanted to say a huge hello to Jules of a new to me and just brand new in general podcast, which is the So Sweet Violet podcast. Jules got in touch with me on Instagram to let me know about her new podcast. And the second I started watching it, it's amazing, guys. Jules has the most beautiful, softly spoken, gentle way of podcasting. And so it's like having tea with a friend and just catching up. It's incredibly soothing. Plus, the projects she shares are amazing. I would say if you like Danny's style, Danny of the Little Bobbins, Jules is quite similar in the way that she kind of goes about just having a nice chat with you about what she's been up to. She only has one episode up on YouTube at the moment, and I am just keeping my fingers crossed, Jules, that you continue doing what you're doing, because I loved it and I genuinely can't wait for your next episode. Thank you, Jules, for introducing me to your lovely new podcast, and I just wish you all the best. Next up is actually a podcast that I mentioned last week. I talked about the fact that I'd had the most wonderful parcel from Gail, who is Gaily Whaley on Instagram and Ravelry. Hello, Gail! And Gail let me know that she actually does host an audio podcast with her friend Charlene, and it is called the Yarniacs podcast. It has been going for quite some time, but this is the first time that I'd become aware of it. And I downloaded a whole load of episodes, which I've been listening to and from work in the car this week. And Gail, I love it. It's fantastic. It's just so much fun. I love the energy between Gail and Charlene on the podcast. They talk about some really interesting things. They have some great knit-alongs going on. If you're into audio podcasts, please go and check them out. Download a couple of episodes, give them a try, because genuinely within the space of about an hour of listening, they are one of my favourite audio podcasts to listen to now. So do go and check out the Yarniacs. Lastly, I want to give a little shout out to a podcast that is not new but has recently been slightly revamped, and that is Handmaiden Woolen, formerly known as the Tiny Paper Foxes podcast. So you probably all know this, you all know who Jenny and Devon are because they are amazing, but Jenny started her podcast originally solo as the Tiny Paper Foxes, with her husband Devon kind of joining at the end of her podcast and sharing tips for photography and filming and that type of thing. But their podcast developed into a beautiful co-hosting situation where both of them started sharing all of their projects, being together for the entirety of the episode, they're fabulous to watch. I really enjoyed their episodes kind of as they were, but they've now kind of rebranded, I guess you would say, as Handmaiden Woolen, going forward as a duo, podcasting together. And also they have a really fun new format where they don't necessarily go through the traditional, these are my projects, this is what I'm doing, this is, as most of us do, as I do myself within podcasting, and watching them talking about kind of different things from week to week. It's so refreshing and so enjoyable, and I presume that the majority of you watch them anyway, but if you don't, please go and check them out and subscribe to them because they are wonderful. But I just wanted to say I'm really loving everything that you're doing, guys. I think that it's fantastic, and yeah, I can't wait to see what you come up with next. So that brings us on to So What, my sewing segment of the podcast. And I must admit, I feel that a couple of weeks ago I had a bit of a knitting schlump going on. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I've got a sewing schlump, but it does feel that I've sort of hit a bit of a brick wall when it comes to my sewing, and I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that all of the projects that I really want to work on are autumn and winter clothes, and we are going into summer. As I always say, I'm an autumn baby. I love the autumn, I love winter, I love layered clothes and coats and all of this type of thing, and I just don't do too well in the summer, which is probably good that I live in the UK where we have summer for like a month out of the whole year. But as it's getting warmer, I'm finding it very frustrating that the things that I want to work on are actually garments that would be a lot more appropriate for autumn weather as opposed to summer. So I think that's probably where my issues are coming from, which means that I haven't got as much done as I would have wanted, and this does include my Wardrobe Architect series. I'm really sorry, but I still don't have any more progress to share with you. I am setting some time aside this week to really focus on Wardrobe Architect, so hopefully within the next couple of weeks I will have a nice meaty update for you. But for now, I'm just going to show you what I have been actually working on in terms of some basic sewing bits and pieces. So the main project that I've been working on this week is my Mimi blouse, and let me show you, it's actually really close to completion. What I've got is the basics of the blouse. So I have the back piece with the yoke at the top here. I have my front pieces, which are also gathered into the yoke at the front. I have constructed a collar, which is here, and I have also constructed my facings, which are here, which I'm now waiting to kind of understitch and press so that the facing lies nicely under the collar. It's difficult when it hasn't been pressed because it doesn't want to sit where I put it, but this is the main kind of idea. If you can see my collar with the facing underneath. This Mimi blouse is a pattern from this incredible book, Love at First Stitch, which is by Tilly of Tilly and the Buttons, and I always liked this book. I enjoyed it. I thought that it was a good book, but the more that I work from it, the more that I'm just blown away by it. And I just think the patterns are incredibly clever in terms of how you can be making what can be seen to be a difficult garment, but within itself, there are lots of things that are helping you out in terms of it being more simple. So for example, the Mimi blouse, you have lots of kind of interesting construction details because it does recommend that you sew French seams, which I have done here. That's one of my French seams, if you can't really see because it's white on white, but it does have French seams in the main body. It's also dealing with gathering stitches because the bottom piece is gathered into the yoke, and as Did I say bottom piece? I meant back piece. The back piece and the front pieces are both gathered into the yoke, so you're dealing with gathers, collar construction, so we've got the collar understitching in terms of the facing, but because it's a relatively loose fitting blouse, there aren't any bust darts or kind of lots of shaping that might be difficult if you're just starting out as a sewer, because the idea is that this is quite loose and gently fitted as opposed to being super kind of like fitted to your body. So it means that you have the capacity to make a blouse, but not one that's necessarily going to leave you kind of crying on the floor because it's too complicated. Obviously it will have buttons and buttonholes, which can be a little bit daunting if you've never used them before, but I love this pattern. I'm really enjoying how it's coming together. And I need another sewcation, you guys. I need another good couple of days to literally just sew and do nothing else and cut out all my fabric and sit at my sewing machine and just sew all the things. That's what I really want at the moment, because I do find it difficult. Whilst with knitting, I'm fine with stopping and starting and doing little bits here and there. With sewing, I really do enjoy sitting down for at least an hour, if not longer, and just completely immersing myself in the sewing process. I don't do so well with just a couple of minutes here and there. This is going to be really quite summery when it's finished, so it will be something that I can wear relatively soon, and it will look cute with this jumper, won't it? But this blouse, to be honest, is acting as quite a source of inspiration for other sewing projects, as is this book, because the more that I have been working on this blouse, I've been thinking, well, what can I wear it with? And it makes me want to make some of the other projects that are in here. First thing that is really kind of calling my name right now is the Delphine skirt, which is basically one of the most simple projects in the book. It's described as an exaggerated A-line shape, which finishes a little bit above the knee, so it's quite flirty and cute. And I really, really love it. How cute is that skirt? And how cute would it look with a Mimi blouse tucked into one of those skirts? And then I realised that I had the perfect fabric in my stash. I have a lot of this fabric. It's this burgundy boiled wool, which I've had for a very long time, and I thought, how cute would this look as a little Delphine skirt with that blouse. Obviously, this is what I'm talking about, being a bit frustrated that we're going into summer, because this wool is relatively thick. It's not something that I'd want to be wearing when it gets hot. Definitely kind of, I would be able to wear this the majority of the year, because we tend to have a cool spring and a cool autumn, a cold winter, and then a wet and hot summer. So I could wear it for at least 3/4 of the year. So I am thinking that this is going to happen, but it does make me feel sad that I won't be able to wear it right away. The other thing that I have been really inspired to make from this book is the Clemence skirt, which I have talked about previously. But the thing that really made me think about this week was I was watching Kristin's most recent podcast, Kristin of Voolevine Yarns and the Yarngasm podcast, and she has recently purchased some of this fabric, which, if you will recall, I made an Anna dress out of this fabric. It's cotton and steel fabric with lots of yarn balls on it, but I do have this kind of end piece from the fabric that I purchased, and I'm thinking there's a possibility I may be able to squeeze a skirt out of this. It's not much, it's not a huge amount of yardage, I must admit, but if I am willing to have something that's slightly above the knee, maybe a little more risque than I would usually have it, I feel that this will end up actually being a really cute skirt, and again, something that would look really pretty with this blouse. It's all about making things that go with each other and that work well together, and the nice thing about this skirt is because it's cotton, it is something that I could wear kind of more throughout the year, because you can, you know, layer it up with tights and a cardigan and nice warm things for the winter, but equally, because it's light and it's cotton, it'd be nice to wear when it gets hotter. So watch this space. If I can squeeze a skirt out of this, I'm going to do my very best and It's nice to have another garment out of this fabric. I wasn't sure whether I would be able to do that, but I love my Anna dress in this fabric. Nice to have multiple garments made out of a fabric that I love. The last thing that I wanted to talk about quickly in So What is actually more of an idea than anything else. Something that I have been thinking about doing for quite some time is a sew along. And rather than just picking a pattern and getting everyone to go away and sew it and come back, what I thought we might be able to do is some form of sew along which also includes tutorials for every step of the process. Because I know that a lot of people who watch my podcast, they get in touch and they say, I would love to be able to sew. You inspire me to start sewing, but then they get intimidated because they don't necessarily know what they're doing. So my idea is to have a sew along that lasts over a certain amount of weeks. But in addition to my regular podcast update, what I will do is each week also upload a tutorial of one particular process of the making of that garment. So it may be cutting fabric, it may be sewing darts, it may be seam finishes, that type of thing. And I'm really excited about the idea of doing it. The reason I'm kind of bringing it up in this way is that it will involve quite a lot of extra work on my end, getting all of those videos up. So before I commit to doing it, I would like to see whether or not there is a fair bit of interest in people who would be excited to get involved in that kind of a process. So if you can comment either on this video or on the Ravelry group thread for this episode, tell me what you think, tell me whether or not that's something that you'd be interested in, and then give me an idea of what type of project you may be interested in sewing along with me. Bearing in mind that this is aimed for people who don't necessarily sew all the time and who are maybe just getting started, I think we're going to at this point not go for something too complicated, so bear that in mind when you're suggesting things that you might want to make. But I'm really interested to know your thoughts, and I'm excited about the idea of doing this with you, so hopefully you are too. But let me know, and if I get enough interest, I'll definitely start putting that into action within the next maybe month or so. So yeah, let me know, comment and give me your thoughts. So moving on from lovely sewing-y goodness, it's time for a lot of people's favourite segments. I've had so much positive feedback about this segment, it's not even true, which is, what would a bookworm do? So I wanted to start off with a book that I have been reading. And this is a book that is written by a lady called Sarah A. Chrisman, and it is called This Victorian Life. Now, you may have heard of Sarah Chrisman because she has made her rounds on the internet over the past several months. Sarah and her husband are huge fans of the Victorian era. They love everything to do with Victoriana. They love the fashion, they love the technology, they love the history of that time period, and they also love the idea of how people went about their day-to-day lives at that time. So much so that they've actually started living the life of a Victorian couple in modern day, which essentially means they dress in original or very well-made reproduction Victorian garments every day, including a corset for Sarah. They cook in the same way. They have all of the same kind of technology within their house that they would have had in the Victorian ages and nothing more. So they don't live with, as far as I know, internet access and mobile phones and that type of thing. They're pretty much living their lives as though they were living in the Victorian era. I find that fascinating. I've always had a huge interest in Victorian England in particular. I also have a huge love for historical costuming throughout time, but I do love Victorian fashion. The tagline is modern adventures in 19th century culture, cooking, fashion and technology. And if you're a fan of Victorian history and learning about a different way of life from a very interesting perspective, from a modern perspective, give this a read. Really great, and I'm really enjoying it so far, so yay! I've said previously I downloaded a couple of books onto my iPad that were talked about on the Twisted Stitches podcast, which is hosted by Twee and Kimberly. Hi guys, if you're watching. I downloaded a book called Tithe by Holly Black and also one called Firelight by Kristen Callahan. The updates on these books, I have been reading Tithe, but to be perfectly honest, it's not really something that I think I will continue in terms of the rest of the series, which is disappointing. I don't really strongly dislike it. It's just not a topic that is really making me want to read and read and read and read and read. It's good and interesting, but I'm just not finding it riveting. And the type of books that I enjoy are the ones that suck you in and you just can't put them down. And talking about books that suck you in, I am a little bit obsessed with Firelight. And Twee, I know you mentioned on your most recent podcast that you hoped that I would enjoy Firelight, and my good grief, I am enjoying it. It has completely and utterly sucked me in, and I want to read it all the time. All the time. From the first page of reading this book, I was completely and utterly hooked. How could I not be when one of the lines on the first page is, this is just entirely my type of humour, so forgive me. Mud-thick fog hung low on the ground, refusing to drift off despite the crisp night breeze. It never truly went away, ever present in London, like death, taxes, and monarchy. It's just fantastic. I'm really, really enjoying it, and I'm absolutely thrilled that it's one of a huge series because I want to read all of them. But yes, Firelight by Kristen Callahan. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers, and I don't want to kind of talk too much about it before I have a real grasp on what's going on, but it is, in its essence, a paranormal historical romance novel, and I am loving it. It's fantastic. So thank you, Twee, for suggesting it as a book on your podcast, because without you, I would have probably never found it, and I am very, very much enjoying it. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of books is a book that I have recently downloaded, and I'm really excited to start reading it. It's a YA novel that has been on the New York Times bestseller list, so probably a lot of you are aware of it, although I had never heard of it myself until recently because Tim Burton is going to be making a film of it, and that is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which, as far as I can gather, is a story of a boy who thinks he's completely normal, who then comes into contact with this school for peculiar children, basically children with different abilities and different things that make them kind of unacceptable to the norm. And I'm not entirely sure kind of what happens more than that. That's the basic kind of synopsis that I got, to be honest, from watching the film trailer. But it's come incredibly well recommended. It looks entirely the type of thing that I would find interesting in terms of the subject matter, and I'm just really interested to get started on it. If you've read it, tell me what you think of it. Well, obviously no spoilers, please. Tell me if you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think of it, and I will obviously keep you up to date as the more of it that I read. But at the moment, it's just really, really nice to have all of these books on the go. Very different things, different subjects, different styles of writing, and I'm really, really liking getting back into reading. So I've got one more segment left, you guys. Thank you for sticking with me thus far, but it's just one more segment, and that is, of course, General Waffle. General Waffle. As always, this General Waffle is going to be nothing about sewing or knitting or any of that crafty stuff, because this is the point in the podcast where I like to waffle on about anything that takes my fancy that week. And this week, I actually thought it would be fun to do a little tattoo talk. I recently posted a couple of pictures on my Instagram in which people could see that I have some tattoos. It's not something that you can see on the podcast because all of the tattoos that I have are actually on my thighs, and I don't really tend to show my thighs off on the podcast very often, but since showing those little kind of snippets of my tattoos on Instagram, I've been getting quite a lot of questions about them. So I thought I would talk a little bit about being tattooed, what tattoos I have, and then I'd close up by answering a couple of frequently asked questions that I do get asked when people find out that I have tattoos. So, my journey as a tattooed person. I have 3 tattoos at the moment that I've got over the past several years. I've always loved tattoos. I think that they are absolutely beautiful. There are some styles of tattooing that I don't necessarily like as much as others, but the idea of wanting a piece of artwork on yourself forever is something that really resonates with me. It's an idea that I love, and every single one of the tattoos that I have got is important and representative of something to me. They're very personal, and they're also unique as they were designed specifically for me. So they mean a lot to me, and I love them very, very much. As you may know, if you've watched my podcast previously, I did used to work in theatre as a performer. And although there are a lot of people who work in the performing industries, so in TV, in film, in theatre, who are tattooed, it's not something that I ever allowed myself to do at a young age, because I didn't want to feel that I was restricting my casting. Because when you start off as an actor, you're so desperate to get all of the jobs that you don't want to do anything that may in any way restrict the kind of roles that you would be considered for. So I spent a very long time looking at people with tattoos and loving them and not allowing myself to get them, because I didn't want to restrict my castability and therefore the kind of jobs that I might be eligible for in theatre. The first time I got a tattoo was a decision that I made when I was actually touring, when I was living out of a suitcase, and I had been doing so for the better part of 15 months. And I realised that I wasn't allowing myself to do something that I really, really wanted to do because I was afraid of what other people might think. And so I made the decision to get my first tattoo when I finished that job, as a kind of a celebration of me allowing myself to do something entirely for me and not based on the decisions of anybody else. The first tattoo I got is a robin surrounded by forget-me-not flowers, and it's also holding a locket. It is representative of the 3 most important people in my life. That is my mum, my dad, and my beautiful husband, Emrys. He wasn't my husband at that point, he was just my boyfriend. And it was done by an incredible tattoo artist called Amy Savage, and it was done in Essex. The next tattoo that I got was a couple of years down the line. This tattoo was one that I got when I'd finally decided that I was no longer going to be working as a performer. My first tattoo is very high up on my outer thigh. Literally, it's something that even if I wear a pair of short shorts, you probably still won't be able to see it. I wanted something that was easy to hide and relatively small, because there was still a possibility of me wanting to perform in the future. When I finally made the decision that I wasn't going to be performing anymore, I decided that I wanted something a little more drastic, and that's when I got my second tattoo, which is a much larger piece which covers almost the entire front of my left thigh. It is inspired by Beauty and the Beast, which is my favourite story of all time. I love the Disney film, but I'm also obsessed with any adaptations of Beauty and the Beast, be they in film form or book form or the original fairy tale. I love it. And it was done by an incredibly talented tattoo artist called Cassandra Francis. It also represents for me my engagement and my marriage to Emrys, as it is the tattoo that I got between getting engaged and getting married. And I am really, really happy that I have it. It is by far my favourite tattoo, and I absolutely love it. The last tattoo that I got is actually my honeymoon tattoo. Yes, I got tattooed on my honeymoon, which was done by Just Jen Tattoos in Edinburgh. She has a beautiful shop there. It was a wonderful experience, and yes, it is entirely to do with my wedding and my honeymoon. I, again, absolutely love it. It means a lot to me, and I'm really, really happy that I got it done at that time. So those are the tattoos that I have. 3 tattoos. 2 on my left leg, 1 on my right leg, and I do have a lot of plans for a lot more tattoos in the future. So, frequently asked questions about tattoos. These are things that I do tend to get asked all the time when people find out that I get tattooed, but in general it is by people who don't necessarily have tattoos themselves. The first question, and the most popular question when people see my tattoos, in particular my large piece, is, did they hurt? And the honest answer is yes. Yes, they did hurt. In case you're not familiar with how tattoos actually work, someone is using what is essentially a vibrating needle to put ink underneath your skin. And yes, that hurts. But to be honest, the real answer is yes and no. Different parts of your body respond differently to being tattooed. So there are places on your body that are a lot more painful to get tattooed than others. But in my experience of pain, I would say every single tattoo that I got hurt in some varying degree. Like I said, when someone's using needles on you, it's probably not going to feel like it's being licked on by kittens. But for me, the first tattoo that I got, I really hardly felt any pain, and I think mostly that's because I was so excited and nervous and my adrenaline levels were through the roof, so that probably blanked out any possibilities of pain. And the last tattoo that I got, the one on my honeymoon, didn't really hurt either, but that's because it is on the outer side of my thigh, which is the kind of more chunky bit, the more fleshy bits, so there's a lot more padding. It felt more bruised than anything, rather than painful. The one that really did cause me a fair bit of pain was my large piece on the front of my left thigh, and that was mostly, I think, because of the detail involved in the piece. There's a lot of line work in it, and a lot of very close line work, so it would feel as though I were being tattooed repeatedly in the same spot over and over and over again. And that's not fun. I also had 2 sessions on that piece. My other 2 tattoos were done in a single session each. I believe they were around about 2 hours for each of those sessions. However, the large piece that was done by Cassandra Francis took a total of about 5 hours, which I did in 2 different sittings, one for the line work and shading and one for all of the colour. And I must admit, after the first session, I felt incredibly unwell, lightheaded, and in a lot of pain, and I almost considered not going back for the second one because of that, but I did. And in the end, it's only a few hours out of your life, and I think that the final result is something that is so beautiful and something that I love so much that I would go through that again to get another tattoo without a second thought. The next question I tend to get asked quite a lot is, are they expensive? And I think that answer is dependent on what you consider to be expensive, but yes, I would say yes. Yes, my tattoos were expensive, and the answer that I would give to anybody who would kind of question that would be, you might pay hundreds of pounds for a piece of artwork to hang up in your house. That's something that you can take down or move around or do something like that with at any point if you decide that you don't like it anymore. With tattoos, they are artwork that I am going to be carrying around on my body for the rest of my life. I'm going to want to pay some money to a decent artist who's going to do a really good job of what I want, because the last thing that I want is to go for someone who is maybe a little bit cheaper, but then end up with something on my body that I'm not 100% happy with. I genuinely think of tattoo artists as artists, and therefore I will pay to get the best possible artist to do a tattoo for me in a style that I know that I will love. The other big question that I get asked all the time is, do you think you will regret them? Honestly, I don't think that I will. The way that I live my life is that I don't live my life with regrets. I'm not the type of person who makes decisions lightly. I think a lot about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I come to my conclusions after a lot of thought and a lot of assessment in terms of how I think that this particular decision will affect everything in my life. I'm talking about the big decisions here, you know, if I'm deciding between like a chocolate or strawberry donut, yes, that's a fairly big decision to make, but I don't tend to take as much time thinking about that. But it took me a long time before I got tattooed. I got my first tattoo, I think, when I was 25 years old. So I was an adult making my own decisions, making educated decisions at that point, and it was something that I had been thinking that I would want for a very long time. And people often say, what if your taste change? What if your style changes? And I agree, it's possible that there may come a point in my life where the style of my tattoos doesn't necessarily represent who I am right there in that moment. However, every tattoo that I have got means something to me. It was done at a particular point in my life where I wanted to remember that time, where I wanted to remember the person that I was at that point, where I wanted to remember other people through the work that I was getting done on myself. And as far as I'm concerned, anything that represents something like that is never going to be something that I would regret. Yeah. I really, really love my tattoos. To be honest, more than anything, I feel that they help me reclaim parts of my body that I'm not necessarily 100% confident with. Talking about being body confident, getting tattooed has allowed me to be much more body confident about my thighs than I ever was before I got tattooed. I think that the areas that I have tattooed are some of the most beautiful parts of my body because they are tattooed now. In terms of the future, I do have lots of other projects planned for tattoos. I don't necessarily have the financial situation to allow myself to do as much as I would like, as quickly as I would like to, but I'm hoping that I may be able to get some work done when I'm in New York next year in January, because I just feel that it will be such a special time and it's a place that I love so much. I could think of nothing more exciting than to get something commemorative. I already have a couple of artists lined up that I have been following their work for some time that I'm a big fan of. So fingers crossed I may be able to get some work done when I am in New York. But yeah, other than that, you'll just have to wait and see as to what happens next in my little tattoo journey. So guys, that brings us to the end of this podcast. Been a little bit all over the place this week, talking about all kinds of different bits and pieces. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, if you like what you've seen, please like the video, please subscribe. I do upload every week. In general, it is on a Monday. I don't know whether this will be coming out on Monday. It may well do if I can get the editing done quickly enough, but in general, it's at the beginning of the week. And I do tend to post little extra bonus videos every so often. So subscribing is the best way to know when I have some new lovely material up, so yay! As always, I hope you have the most incredible week filled with all the things that you love, filled with loads of sewing, loads of knitting, loads of tattoos if you like that kind of stuff, loads of amazing books, watch some awesome TV. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones, you need to go out there and you need to watch Game of Thrones. It's the best thing ever. But for now, I'm gonna love you and leave you because I want to go and spend some time with my little poochie. But I will see you all again really, really soon. Bye!